Some call it lion season. I call it misdirection season. Either way, it's almost over as we enter the eve of the NFL draft. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 23rd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you, whether you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. You know we appreciate both. Shows growing each and every day, and that's because of your consistent support, the passion for the Raiders, and obviously the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. We appreciate him. We shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, we have that for you, 707-654-4693. As a matter of fact, we'll close out the show hearing from you. I know we didn't get to it on yesterday, but we definitely will have it today. So your calls, texts, plenty of feedback, lots of thoughts heading into the NFL draft, which is coming up on Thursday. Excited about that, live from Green Bay. So your calls, your texts, we'll close out the show in segment number 3. Segment number 2, speaking of texts, calls, how about tweets? Got hit up by a great listener on Tuesday afternoon and said, Q, I need to get your thoughts on the importance of this draft as far as it goes with Raider history, the Raiders team moving forward. Like, how important is this draft going to be, in your opinion? Love to hear you break that down. We'll talk about it in segment number 2. It's just that simple. You throw it at me, we'll go ahead and talk about it. There's no doubt. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as we always do, and we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show. That's FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I'll tell you more about them later on the show. You can do a lot with FanDuel and the NFL draft. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there to you. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Again, news and notes here in segment number 1. And as you can tell, if you're watching on the YouTube page, I'm still at the building, ESPN Milwaukee. It's Tuesday night. I'm recording this for Wednesday before I make my trip back to the Airbnb. And it's so funny. I mentioned riding back to the Airbnb on Monday night. I was driving back. It's a couple hours from where I am at ESPN Milwaukee to the Airbnb I'm staying at. And it's so funny. I'm just driving. I'm listening to the radio, listening to the NBA playoff game, and I'm in my own zone, right? I look up. I'm on the 43, by the way, so if anyone knows the area, you know where I'm at. I look up and I go, what's that big old G there? Oh, yeah, that'd be Lambeau Field. So it just all of a sudden popped up. I actually drove 10 minutes further than I was supposed to, but that's okay. I saw the G. I saw Lambeau Field. I saw the calm before the storm and thought, man, that's pretty cool. So what I'm going to try to do is make another run at it again tonight, but this time take some pictures and tweet it out at your boy Q254. But again, just enjoying and trying to soak in the whole experience of being here in the area and get ready to cover the draft right there, boots on the ground, coming up on Thursday and on Friday. But the big news of the day from Tuesday, first when it comes to the silver and black, Adam Schefter, NFL insider for ESPN, was on Unsportsmanlike, which is the morning show with Chris Canty, Evan Cohen, and Michelle Smallman, and was talking about Ashton Jeanty at number 6. We talked about it till we're blue in the face, right? It takes a lot to make me blue, but I'm just saying, we've been talking about that quite a bit. And it's funny now, all of a sudden, we're getting right here. We're at the eve of the draft, and now it's like, wait, hold on. Not so sure if Ashton Jeanty is going to be the pick at 6 or if he's going to be available. Well, Adam Schefter added another twist to it on Tuesday when he said this.
Everybody in the world is at Ashton Jeanty going there, and I'm not so sure about that either. I think that the Raiders are open to moving back. Whenever I hear a team is open to moving back, that tells me that they're not married to anyone at that spot. Now, that means they could stay at 6 and they could pick Ashton Jeanty, but they don't sound so committed to Ashton Jeanty currently that they're not prepared to move back. So everybody's got Ashton Jeanty going 6. I say I'm not so sure about that.
So he's not convinced that Jeanty is the pick at 6. And he really makes it sound like even if he's there at 6, he might not be the pick, and that the Raiders are more interested and have a thought in the process of possibly trading back. And now, again, I tell you, don't believe anything you hear and half of what you read. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. But I do know, and I've worked with Adam Schefter long enough, not side by side, hand by hand. I'm not shooting him a text or anything, but I've worked along with him enough to know that whenever he starts saying something and he's a matter of fact about things, then he knows this from a place of something. He's coming from somewhere, and I'm not telling you exactly where he's coming from. I'm not saying that that's gospel. Not saying that the Raiders won't draft Jeanty and trade back, but it sounds like there's some willingness to trade back. Now, the question to me is, how far would they be willing to go? They're sitting there at 6 right now, maybe 6 to 9. We've talked about that scenario with the Saints before. I could see that, right? If you have a couple players that you feel comfortable taking, you want to collect a couple more picks. I had a suggestion on my radio show on Tuesday, kind of make some trades, multiple times, not just one big trade. Like I had someone say go from 6 to 18. Like that's as far as we'd be willing to go back. And I thought that's a big, massive jump, 6 to 18. But then I had another suggestion. Well, do it in increments, go from like 6 to 9, 9 to 12, maybe 12 to 15 or whatever the case may be. And I think back to 2018 draft when John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie made multiple trade backs and they ended up with Colton Miller. But remember how many times they were on the clock and then they made a trade, but they made small little leaps. So I could see something like that. But if that's the case, you're looking at, in my opinion, you're looking at a Jahdae Barron or a Will Johnson, the cornerback from Texas or the cornerback from Michigan. I'm looking at wide receivers like Matthew Golden or Teteroa McMillan. I can see those kind of guys. And then linebacker Jahad Campbell or offensive tackle Kelvin Banks. Like those are the guys I'm looking at. Those 6 guys, that's about as far as I'm willing to go back. So whatever that range is, if those guys are still on the board and I feel comfortable, like say Barron, Johnson, and like Kelvin Banks are still on the board, and a team is saying that, yeah, hey, we'll trade up to 6. We want you to come back to 10. All right, well, if there's Barron, there's Johnson, there's Banks, or whatever the case may be, there's 3 quality guys there, and then maybe even one more that I say, okay, I can feel comfortable settling there, I would do that. Outside of that, you know how it is. I've been saying it for a long time. I don't want to miss out on a chance of getting a really big-time impactful player. But those players that I mentioned, Barron, Johnson, Golden, McMillan, Campbell, and Banks, those are all guys that I think are available in the 10 back, right? So you can get them at pick number 10 or maybe a little bit further back, like 10 to 16. I think that's the range for those guys. Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, is very intriguing to me because we know the linebacking room for the Raiders is not solidified yet, right? They brought in a couple veterans, but they're older, and even a guy like Devin White, he's a guy that he's on his last legs trying to even find if he's going to have a spot in the NFL, right? He got no guaranteed money on a one-year deal, so nothing's guaranteed with him. So Campbell would be an interesting prospect, but I wouldn't see him as an interesting prospect at number 6. I see him as an interesting prospect around, like I said, like 12, 13, maybe even the 16 range. Then I think all of a sudden now you got something. You got an impactful player, and you're getting some extra draft capital so you can get some more cracks at it and get some more talent. But that was the latest from Schefter as of Tuesday morning about the Raiders, and not so sure, not so fast when it comes to Ashton Jeanty there at number 6. Then this report came out not too much longer after that, and that's from Peter Schrager. He's new to ESPN. He was at NFL Network, NFL Insider. He does a really good job as well. He wasn't talking about the Raiders, but instead he was talking about what we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen any trades. All the picks that are in place, 1 through 32, are the way that they were when the seasons all got wrapped up, when the Super Bowl got wrapped up for everybody, right? There has been no trades. It's the first time it's taken this long to get to any trades in a very, very long time. Will that stay the same when it comes to Thursday in the draft? Well, we'll find out. Most likely there'll be a couple trades on trade day. But Peter Schrager is making it sound like there could be some possibilities popping off even before that. Check it out.
There have been phone calls made to both the Browns at 2 and the Giants at 3 with the intention to move up, from several different sources telling me there are teams who are looking to get up in this draft to either the 2 or the 3 spot. The assumption being to move up to the 2 or the 3 spot, it would be for Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, or the running back, Ashton Jeanty, who everyone expects to go somewhere in that 5 to 7 to 8 range. There have been teams making calls, and those teams are not immediately slamming down the phone. The Browns at 2, the Giants at 3. Everyone assumes it's going to be chalk, that this is going to go Cam Ward, it's going to go Travis Hunter, it's going to go Abdul Carter. Not so fast. I think the 2 spot gets very interesting if the Browns are listening to a Godfather deal for them to trade back and someone to trade up into the top 3.
So that was Peter Schrager right there. He was on Get Up on ESPN on Tuesday, and he's saying that all of a sudden Cleveland's getting calls. All of a sudden the Giants are getting calls. And look, every team is getting calls, right? That's the one thing that I do know. Every team is getting calls. So let's just throw the Raiders in there. John Spytek's on the phone will say Cleveland. Hey, if a guy is available, now twos, that doesn't make sense. Maybe three. So if John Spytek's calling, Joe Shane, the GM of the Giants at number 3, and saying, hey, if this guy's on the board, or what would it take to move up if we were interested, if a guy was there for us, what would it take to trade up from 6 to 3? What would you be interested in? Like that's what you have to do right now. You have to do that before the draft. You don't do that the day of the draft when you're on the clock, because you're not going to work out a deal in 15 minutes. So what you have to do is you have to have the parameters already in place. Then if that guy that you happen to see starts dropping, or you feel like, yeah, let's go ahead and make that move, we decided that's a good one, pick up the phone, call Joe Shane. Hey, remember that deal we talked about the other day? We'd like to do it. What are your thoughts? No, kick rocks. We don't want to do it anymore. Or no, kick rocks. Or sweeten the deal, right? That's how you do that. But you already have to have somewhat of the parameters in place. So, we heard Shefty saying that the Raiders are interested in trading back. I think every team would be interested in trading back. But in this draft, when we talk about, a lot of starters, not a lot of stars, I just don't see it being super active. And obviously, the quarterbacks are what usually drives most of the trades, and the quarterback draft is just not where it is. I would actually be more likely I would be to think that, and sign up to think that there's going to be maybe trades at the back end of round 1, maybe for some quarterbacks, maybe like a Tyler Shook or a Jalen Milroe, or maybe even a Jackson Dart if he happens to fall. I could see that happening more than I could see somebody trading into the top 2, top 3. Schrager's talking about Cleveland getting a king's ransom. Who are you getting a king's ransom for? I know Travis Hunter is a hell of a player, but I don't see anyone moving up super far up to go get him and giving up a king's ransom for him. That's what they usually reserve for quarterbacks. Now, I know that there's talk about the Bears going from 10 to, above the Raiders and maybe even above Jacksonville to try to go get Ashton Jeanty, but I don't see them going up to number 2. I would see them going to maybe number 4 with the Patriots. So I kind of ruled those two teams out. I had someone hit me up and ask me about the Broncos going from 20 all the way up to the top 2 or 3. I don't see that's a hell of a jump. I don't see them making that jump to go up and get a running back either. I think that for the trade for Ashton Jeanty, if a team wants them, like the Bears or the Broncos or someone else, you're talking about 4. And I still don't think the Broncos would get all the way up to 4. But for the Bears, I could see, 10 to 4, or maybe the Jets. And that's kind of a way outside, dark horse, maybe number 7 to number 4. That would make more sense. But 20, I don't see it. So, again, just the latest and the greatest. Those are the reports that are out there. Again, believe nothing that you hear and only half of what you read when it is NFL draft time. And I'm so glad that it is NFL draft time. So how important is this draft going to be for the Silver and Black, not only this year, but moving forward with this organization? We'll read you the tweet that I got that the whole subject came up, and we'll break that down. We'll do it in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, they are here. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it so easy. You could pick your favorite team. You could dive into player props, 3-pointers, the steals, to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Matter of fact, the other day had a nice little parlay going on, and part of the parlay was the Knicks. This was game 1. It was the Knicks and the Pistons under 22.5 3-point made field goals total. And neither one of these teams normally hit a lot of 3-pointers, right? And so we said, hey, let's hit the under. So we hit the under, and of course, it went over. It was at 25. And then in game 2, they had a total of 16 3-pointers. I said, see, that's how it goes. But that's why we have a lot of fun. That's the excitement that it brings. So you can do that as well. Go to FanDuel.com, check it out. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Again, don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to get into the importance of this draft for the Silver and Black. And this all comes from a tweet that we got from a member of Raider Nation. We do appreciate that. At your boy Q254, at Ari Produces. This says, and it's from Coach Connors, at Main Hiker 1. He says, hey, Q, if time allows on the Locked On Raiders podcast, can you touch on your thoughts on this being the most important draft in Raiders history? I really think it is. So there you go. That's Coach Connors at Main Hiker 1 on Twitter. He hit me up with that on Tuesday, and I said, yeah, there's no doubt. I could definitely touch on that. And thank you for the tweet, first of all. And thank you for the subject. And hopefully, this is what you're looking for. And I thought it was a really good subject anyway. So why not talk about it, especially on the eve of the NFL draft? And I'll say this. It's hard to say it's the most important draft in Raiders history, but it isn't at the same time, right? And the reason I say that is because it's the next one. So it is very important because this, for the third year in a row, is a new staff, right? New GM, new head coach. So, again, just like what Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels were trying to do, same thing Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce are trying to do, now John Spytek and Pete Carroll are trying to do. Change the culture, get back to winning ways with the Raiders, and all of a sudden establish some kind of consistency. Right? Some kind of consistency. The Raiders don't have that. I was doing my Unnecessary Roughness Ultimate Mock Draft on my radio show, and we wrapped up on Tuesday with Mike Gill, who covers the Eagles. He does a really good job. He does radio there in Atlantic City. And he told me, Q, Howie Roseman has been the GM of the Eagles my whole career. And that almost made me fall out of my seat. The seat I'm sitting in right now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sitting in the same seat. It almost made me fall out of my seat. The same GM his whole career. Now, I'll tell you, my career is not, I don't think, as long as Mike Gill's. I don't know his whole history. I know that I've known him since the Raiders drafted Garyon Conley. That was back in, 2017. So I've known him for a very long time. In that time, just going back to 2017, the Raiders have had Reggie McKenzie. They've had Mike Mayock. They've had Dave Ziegler. They've had Tom Telesco. And now they have John Spytek. They've had 5 GMs in the time since the Raiders drafted Garyon Conley back in 2018. That was, 7 years? And they've had 5 GMs. So the problem is, I thought the most important draft in Raiders history, and the Raiders, the history of the team, was the 2019 draft when they had 3 first-round picks. And then the 2020 draft was going to be very important as well when you could follow it up with 2 first-round picks. Well, we know how that shook out. 2019, only thing that came from that really good was Josh Jacobs in the first round, and he's no longer with the team. 2020, neither one of those guys that were first-round picks are with the team. And I obviously talk about those now. 2019, Max Crosby came from that. Hunter Renfrow was in that draft. Nate Hobbs was in that draft. They were really good players, but look who's still on the team. Max Crosby, right? And then you look at other drafts. 2020, you see, it was 2020 2020, that was the COVID one, right? So Trayvon Merrick was in the second round. Alex Leatherwood was in the first round. And we all know how that worked out. He was at number 17. That didn't work out. So that was 2021. Yeah, so regardless, you know what I mean. You can look at the history of the Raiders and their draft class right now, and it's not been good. The problem is, it's hard to be good. Even the last couple drafts, I heard a stat driving into the radio station, ESPN Milwaukee, on Tuesday from Jen Latta, and she does the morning show on ESPN Milwaukee. She does a fantastic job. She said, since 2022, 19 out of 21 draft picks from the Eagles are still on the roster. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. I know the Raiders don't have it like that. So I went back and did the research. Well, to my surprise, since 2022, 19 out of 23 draft picks from the Raiders are still on the roster. So they have a lot of quality guys, or a lot of dudes that are still on the roster. The problem is the quality. MJ Devonshire, Dylan Lobby, Tyree Wilson, Big Mike, Michael Mayer, Aiden O'Connell, Matthew Butler, Thayer Mumford. All those guys are questionable, right? And the reason why they're questionable is not because they're not good players, but the staff keeps changing. The turnover, you can never get consistency. I said this when Dave Ziegler was the GM, right? That he has Mike Mayock's scouts. He has John Gruden's scouts out there looking. And then all of a sudden he got the second draft where he made his selections. It was the first year of his actual scouts. And then he gets fired. So then Tom Telesco is working with Dave Ziegler's scouts. And he does the best he can, did a really good job. And then he gets fired. So now you've got John Spytek working with Tom Telesco scouts. And that's going to turn over after this draft is over. And so you can never have consistency. So now you see guys like Nate Hobbs in Green Bay. You see Trayvon Merrick in Carolina. You see, other draft picks that they've had. You see them gone to Josh Jacobs, obviously, Green Bay, right? You've seen guys like that move on and go to other places because it's not the same thing that they're looking for. So for the Raiders, this is a very important draft, and one could say the most important draft because it's the next one, but it's also the first one. They've got to establish what they want, what they're looking for in their players. They've got to go out there, draft the guys that can be the foundational piece. The problem with the Raiders is the foundation, they have some good quality players on the team. They just don't have any depth. There's no depth, and there's a reason why. Because they've missed on so many draft picks in the past. In the past couple years, you're looking at the draft, they've done okay. It hasn't been terrible, but also these guys that I mentioned before haven't really fully developed. I mean, again, Thayer Munford, he seems like he's a swing tackle at best, right? A guy who could be depth. All right, cool. Aiden O'Connell. Who knows if he's going to stick around, right? There's reports that he could be traded on draft day. Michael Mayer, there was early reports that he could be traded. I'm not saying I'm pounding the table for him to get traded, but there's a possibility. Tyree Wilson, former number 7 overall pick, there's a good shot that he could be gone, maybe moved on draft day as well. So it's like, you just don't know what you're trying to build when you keep on tearing it down, building it up, tearing it down, building it up. It's like you're starting to build the house and you're like, you know what? I don't like the way that's looking. Let me start over. It's like this podcast. Sometimes I'll do the show and I'll be like, you know what? I don't like the way it sounds. I'm going to start over. But that's cool. That's easy to do, right? I could do that. I could just start it over and say, yeah, I want to go at this angle. But when you're trying to build a team, you can't do that. You can't consistently start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. It's like once you build something, you've built it. Could you imagine building a house and then when it's all said and done, you're like, yeah, I don't really like the way that the chimney's sitting, and so yeah, let's go on and take that down. Let's take it to about the second floor. We'll do it's just like you can't do that. But unfortunately, that's what the Raiders have been doing. So this is technically the most important draft. I don't think it's bigger than the 2019 draft because that one was the draft that really could have set them up for long-term success. 3 first-round picks. That's 15 years of control of these players if you wanted them. Right, Cleve Farrell could have been a 5-year guy. Josh Jacobs could have been a 5-year guy. And Jonathan Abram could have been a 5-year guy if they got the right guys. Obviously, we know how Josh Jacobs went. They didn't even pick up the 5th-year option and then wanted to keep him around. It was wild how that played out, right? I mean, once they decided not to pick up the 5th-year option, I thought, okay, well, they're going to sign him to a long-term deal. And, again, we know how that shook out. So that didn't work. But those 2 drafts back-to-back, 2019, 3 first-round picks, 2022 first-round picks, had the opportunity to set the Raiders up for the long haul. Again, going back to what Mike Gill told me on my radio show on Tuesday, he said, Q, not only are the Eagles the Super Bowl champs, not only do they have the same GM in place for the longest, Howie Roseman, they've got 20 draft picks in the next 2 drafts. 20 of them. So they're a team to watch out starting on Thursday that could be aggressive. They can start packaging picks. They can start moving, targeting certain players. They have that ability because they have depth. They already have a really good roster. And they have plenty of draft capital. They're picking last, so they can sit there and survey, watch how the board is starting to unfold. Oh, this guy's here? Oh, this guy's here? Okay, hey, here's a couple picks. Boom, we're going to move up to 22 and going to go grab this guy because he's going to fit perfect right next to Jalen Carter, right next to this guy, right next to that guy. And, oh, yeah, okay, now we've reset the room. We've added more depth. We've added a 5th-year option. We've done this. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they can do. Just like last year, they needed corners, so they went and got Quinyon Mitchell, then Cooper DeJean in round 2. Yeah, those are targeted guys. Because they could do that. That's where the Raiders need to get. So this is the most important one because it's this one and it's the first one for John Spytek and Pete Carroll. They need to establish themselves as far as an organization and what they're going to do and who they're going to be. I think that's the most important part. Who are you going to be? Who do you plan to be moving forward? They'll set the tone starting on Thursday. Hopefully they'll set the tone starting on Thursday. So that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show. 707-654-4693. That comes up next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor here on the show, and that is Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that the Fire TV is also an Xbox? Did you know that? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No consoles required. Nope. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. And you're ready to go just like that. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, EA Sports College Football's 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning-fast speeds you need to stay competitive, and we know how important that is. With more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney+, Max, and more, it is the way to go. Right now, what do you need to do? Head to Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. It's all one word, Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller is required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from 60s Era Raider. It says, Q, 60 Era's Raider here in the 603. Here, I know it might be a reach, but there's something about Jackson Dart that keeps haunting me a bit. I felt the same way last draft with Bo Nix. I've seen the pros and cons on Dart, but my eyes told me during the Senior Bowl that he may have it. The first round seems like a real reach, but he won't be around at 37. Your thoughts, Q, that 60s Era Raider. Thanks for the text. I appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, look, he's got a lot of traits that I think a lot of people like. He obviously had some really good production at Ole Miss, but I just get a little concerned because he's at Ole Miss, he's under Lane Kiffin, and Lane Kiffin runs one of those offenses that I talk about quite a bit on the show where it's very user-friendly, very quarterback-friendly. So I'm just intrigued, I really am, to see what the range is. There was one point where it's like, oh, this guy's going to be a second-round pick. Then there was a point where it's like, oh, this guy's going in the top 10. Now it's like, hey, he's not going to be at the draft, and he's going to be possibly a second-round pick. It's like, wait, hold on. How does he go up and down just like that, right? I mean, again, we know what it is in draft season, but it's just like, wait, how does these ranges, how do they vary so much? So I'm not 100% sold on Jackson Dart. I think that he has a few tools. The one thing I'll say, and this is a position that the Raiders have put themselves in that I think is a good position, that you can get him, say you get him in the second round. Again, he might not be there at 37, he might, but just say you get him in the second round, or maybe even trade up into the back end of round 1 because, well, you want to get that 5th-year option, which a lot of people are telling me that's not a big deal anyway. Okay, so just say you make a good deal. You trade up to the back end of round 1, you get Jackson Dart. The good thing is he can sit behind Geno for a little bit, right, and he can learn. And they'll figure out what they have in Jackson pretty quickly, right? Not saying he's a guy that you throw out on the field. It's similar to Jalen Milroe, but I think he's a more advanced passer than Jalen Milroe, right? I think Jalen Milroe, if you go for him, if the Raiders or anyone else goes for him, they go for the pure upside. Like, this dude has a chance to be a monster or he has a chance to be an absolute bust, right? And there's people that are talking about him like, oh, he's very familiar or similar to Anthony Richardson. I don't see that. I really don't, because he had plenty of starts at Alabama. He's won a lot at Alabama, where Anthony Richardson never did that. He came into the league with 13 career starts. That's not who Jalen Milroe is. But with that being said, we were talking about Jackson Dart. I think he's a much better passer at this stage of the game than Milroe. So you have an opportunity, if the Raiders were to grab him and let him sit behind Geno, he could do the same thing as a Milroe and sit there and learn. And then they feel like they know what they have. Are they ready to pass the sticks on to him? Or do they say, yeah, he's just not going to cut it for what we need to do? Chip Kelly might be able to find a way to use his ability. He does have the ability to use his legs too, and so that could be a good factor for the Chip Kelly-led offense. So definitely something to think about. I wouldn't rule it out. Let's put it like that. I'm not 100% against it. I'm not a big Jackson Dart guy, but I'm not 100% against it. So thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Sometimes you got to go with your gut feeling. That's the one thing I will say. Just like last year, I was very questionable and ho-hummy on Bo Nix. I was like, I don't know about Bo Nix. He proved to be a really good quarterback, at least for Sean Payton, and that's all that really matters. Bo Nix might not be a Hall of Famer, but he's really good for what they do, and so I got to give him a lot of credit for that, and he opened my eyes because I didn't think he was going to be that good of a quarterback, but I do like what he's doing in Denver. You know, I think he fits with what Sean Payton wants a lot, so sometimes you just got to go with your gut. Thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Howard, our guy in Oakland. He's calling to talk about the draft and what he does not want to see from GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll. Here he is, Howard from Oakland.
Yeah, hey, Q. This is Howard from Oakland again. You know, I don't want to, just flood your line here, but I thought this was important. Like I said, I've been a long-time Raider fan since 1966. And, I've heard some of the stuff the guys are saying on the feedback on your show and stuff like that about Jeanty. I heard what Mail said, and Mail's right. He's a generational player, and this other guy came on, and he made some sense, too, about, how you could fall down and get a running back later. But this is a generational player. And like I'm telling Pete and Spazak, don't get cute here. Don't get cute. Come on and just get Jeanty right away. Ashton is Jeanty is the person. I mean, okay, so we got to beef up the offensive line some. And I agree with the other guy that just came on and talked and said about these small schools and these offensive linemen. We got this big tackle down at William and Mary. Somebody needs to look at it. And I'm sure it's a lot of, kids like that the big schools didn't think about that want to go on and get these guys in the small school, and they're really good players. It was a long time where the black college and stuff, the pros wasn't looking at them before Willie Brown and those guys and some of the big time players that went in there. So we need to just don't get too sweet and don't get too cute with this stuff and go and draft, Ashton. And I agree. If it takes a year to get the infrastructure right, for a big time back like that, hell, we're going to have him. We're going to have him for 5 years and maybe more because we get a second contract going, after the 5th year option, he might be around for 10 years, might I say, Peters had Marshawn Lynch, and might I say, we might be looking at Jim Brown. So hey, man, just this is Howard. Like I say, around here they call me the voice of reality, and this is reality. We got to draft this kid. Okay, Q. I'm out.
Big Howard, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. Don't get too cute. Don't overthink it. Just make it happen. Go grab Jeanty, right? And look, if Genty's there, it feels to me like that'll be the pick, but that's just, again, that's me going like what I said, the 60 years Raider. Go with your gut. That's just kind of me with my gut. If he's there at 6, right? There's no telling that he's going to be there at 6. Matter of fact, more people believe that he's not going to be there at 6. When you mentioned small school offensive lineman, that's definitely a thought. You talked about Charles Grant from William and Mary. Yeah, he's definitely getting a lot of love. He's a guy that I could see, and it's funny, ever since that was told to me, Greg Allman told me that he believes that Spytech and company will go for a small school offensive lineman. Like, there's more traction there. As you do the research, that's what they do. That's kind of where they hung their hats. So, yeah, I could see that being a real strong possibility, and Charles Grant from William & Mary would make a lot of sense. With that being said, I know Missouri's not a small school, but it's not necessarily the school that's pumping out a ton of NFL talent either. I can see Armand Membu being a guy that the Raiders look at and say, yeah, we like him at the tackle position. True right tackle, I could definitely see that. But from your point, I mean, you're talking about a smaller school like William and Mary, and that's what Greg Allman was referring to as well. But thanks so much for the call. It's always great to hear from you. Up next, got a text from Rum Runner. Says, hey, Q, Rum Runner here from the 804, Richmond, Virginia. After hearing that Cleveland and New York are taking calls, what are the odds that we shock everyone and trade up to get Travis Hunter? Think about it. We have holes at cornerback and wide receiver. This kid could do both. Just think it out loud. Love what you do, and go Raiders. Rum Runner, 804, Richmond, Virginia. Thanks for the text. Appreciate you. Ooh, I don't see it. I'm not saying I don't like it, right? I would have no problem. I would love to see Travis Hunter in a Raiders uniform. I think that'd be awesome. I think Raider Nation would be excited. Allegiant Stadium would be packed to the gills with Travis Hunter fans. He's an electric player. I think you start him out at cornerback and then work him in as wide receiver. It's going to be hard for him to master both positions in the NFL. The cardio, I think he'll be fine, but the actual physicality and trying to learn those jobs is going to be tough. But, man, I'd love to see him do it. I don't know if the Raiders are going to be interested in making that trade. They're down to 9 draft picks right now because of the Geno Smith trade, so you'd have to give up a few picks to go from 6 to 2, and I don't know if Cleveland would be interested, right? Cleveland would probably say, hey, look, that's our guy. That's our guy. Yeah, we can get a couple extra draft picks out of it, but is it going to be worth it? Unless they're really trying to tax a team like the Raiders for that number 2 spot, and someone says, yeah, we're willing to take that tax in. I just don't see it. I don't want to get all, hot and bothered about it because I don't think it's a real scenario. But, man, I'll tell you what, if the Raiders were to walk away from the draft or even be in any position to go get Travis Hunter in the draft, that would be awesome. I would have no problem with that at all. But thanks for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from John in Wisconsin. He's calling to talk about watching the draft in Green Bay and what he thought of when he thinks Green Bay and the Raiders. Here's John from Wisconsin.
Hey, this is John from Wisconsin giving a call. It hit me all of a sudden that we are watching this draft up in Green Bay, and our last Raider that called Green Bay his hometown was none other than Alec Ingold. And I know his tenure with the Raiders didn't end well with his ACL and his release in 2021. But to me, you look at the draft and you look at his tenure there, and I think he symbolizes the whole thing. Not only is the city his hometown, but first off, we got to find those guys that are just diamonds in the rough. And I watched his college career and knew, as an undrafted free agent, we found a kid that was going to play hard, that was proud to wear the shield and wanted to just step between the lines and give his best. And then that second thing was we got to find those guys like Ingold once he left and went to Miami. Walter Payton, Man of the Year. He ended up, Tyreek Hill, two of those guys called him the MVP of the team when they made their playoff run 2 years ago. And so I'm fired up and excited, not just for the first round with the big hitters and, maybe the Jeanty kid or Mason Graham, those guys that seem to have those intangible qualities. But end of the day, every roster's got talent in the NFL, and I'm excited for what Pete Carroll's got going in his staff, where hopefully we can find a kid like Ingold, who to me represented the Raiders, and those types of kids in the draft. So I'm fired up. I'm heading there with both my sons. We'll be there in Green Bay. I think it'll be fun to have it in the shadows of Lambeau Field. And then my last thing is, I think the Packers might be a model for it, to be real. I think other than our guy, Josh Jacobs, their roster of 53, I read more than 50 of them were kids they drafted. So let's build this thing. Let's build it up the right way. Let's be patient, not look for those quick fixes, and find ourselves some guys that are young men in the locker room that want to represent us and give it their all. I love the way we're heading. I think we're, for the first time in a while, looking at a real upswing in the silver and black. Looking forward to the draft. John from Wisconsin. I'm out.
Alec Ingold, that is the answer to the trivia question. Who was the first Raider to score a touchdown in Allegiant Stadium? Yes, that would be one fullback, Alec Ingold. Great Raider. Hated to see him go. That was another guy that, didn't get re-signed by McDaniels. Remember, he was a undrafted free agent when John Gruden and company found him. They just didn't use a fullback offensively like that. They didn't want to give him money. They brought in Jakob Johnson. I had no problem with Jakob, but he wasn't Alec Ingold, man. He was a real deal quality dude. Even when I get to run into him every once in a while, either that's on Radio Row or wherever the case may be, wherever I happen to see him, he is an absolute dude, man. He's a fan favorite, media favorite. He was a favorite of the players in the locker room, like everyone. He was a captain. Think about that. A fullback was the captain. That tells you all you need to know. If the Raiders could get a couple dudes like that to be, their core, and going back to segment number 2, the guys that they can build the foundation and really build this team around, and I'm not necessarily saying a fullback, but players like Ingold that brought what he brought to the table, yeah, that'd be a win for sure. So, man, that would be awesome. Well, enjoy the draft. I'll be all over Green Bay the next few days. I'm looking forward to it. And, maybe I'll run into you and the family. I don't know where you guys are going to be, but I know I'll be all over the draft. So look out for your boy. If you see me, if you're watching on YouTube, you know what I look like. Just say what's up. So there's that. So thanks so much for that call. Appreciate you. Got one more text. We'll close this out with a text from Brent from Boston. What's up, Q? Brent from Boston checking in from the land of former Raiders. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the draft, but more specifically pick 6, because let's be honest, that nobody can accurately guess what happens in the later rounds anyway. The home run pick for me is Jeanty. If he can stay healthy and be the workhorse he is known to be, then I think his ceiling is going to be on the Mount Rushmore of great Raiders backs like Allen, Jackson, Jacobs, Jeanty. Ground rule double pick for me is trading back if Jeanty is gone and getting Barron. Swiss Army knife player and day one weapon on the defense. And lastly, and I know you don't agree, but the strikeout for me is Shador, especially after we have Geno at quarterback. Taking Sanders would eliminate this team from being in play for either the next 2 draft classes, which will be loaded at quarterback with Manning, Aller, Lagway, Nussmeier, and Way, and many other prospects who decide to go pro in the next couple of years. I know. I watch way too much college football. Anyway, Q, appreciate all your hard work that you do for the nation. Congrats on all the opportunities you've earned. Really cool to see your success from a distance. Hoping for a home run, Raiders. That's Brent from Boston. And hey, look, if you don't want Shador, that's okay. I'm not mad at that. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but that's okay. I don't mind, being on that island by myself, and I could end up being proven wrong, right? It wouldn't be the first time. I'm okay with that, but I just think that he's a really good quarterback. But there are others that, that you have mentioned that could be there and play. No telling if they come out or not because of NIL, that changes the game a little bit, but and I don't know if the Raiders are going to be in position to go get them either, right? I don't think that they have any plans of picking in the top 5, top 6 anytime soon, but things go wrong, right? Losses happen. Guys get injured. So anything can happen. So you could be onto something, but the home run would be Jeanty. It feels like the home run would be Jeanty. The question is he going to be there at 6? Right? It's no longer, is 6 too high for running back, like I said back around the combine time. Now it's like, man, is he going to make it to 6? That's the big question. That's how much the narrative has shifted. Not necessarily how teams feel about him, but the way the narrative is talked about has changed. And again, I'll be the first one to say it. At the combine, Vinny Bonsignore was saying, hey, about Ashton Jeanty, right? Go get Matt Stafford and go get Ashton Jeanty. And I kept saying, I don't know, right? 6 is a little high for the running back. But now it's like, man, he might not even be available at number 6. So, 5, he's in play for Jacksonville. Even 4, he's in play for the Patriots. And if there's a team that decides they want to trade up to 4 and get him, jump in front of the Raiders, like maybe the Bears, who apparently are really, in love with Jeanty, maybe that happens as well. So yeah, we'll see. But I like your references there: home runs, ground rule doubles, strikeouts, all that good stuff. Little baseball references. Nothing wrong with that early in baseball season. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. That's all I got time for on today's show. Still got a call from Raider Dougie in Central Valley, California. We'll hit that tomorrow. Also excited the fact that I get a chance today or Wednesday to be able to talk to a bunch of different prospects. There's 15 of these guys that are going to be in the green room. I'll have access to all those guys. I'll have access to Daniel Jeremiah, have access to Joel Klatt, have access to Charles Davis. Looking forward to talking to all these guys right before the draft gets going. So, of course, we'll bring a lot of that to the table here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So tomorrow, Raider Nation, we're almost there. We're almost there. Hang on. Hold on. Hydrate. We're going to get there. But hold on, Raider Nation. Trust me, we're almost at the finish line. So until tomorrow, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.